It is day 242 of the second Trump administration. Tonight, Donald Trump is back in Washington after a state visit to the UK, and he returns home to a new firestorm of controversy after ABC pulled late-night host Jimmy Kimmel off the air indefinitely. ABC made that decision following criticism from FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, as well as Nexstar, who is a company that operates 28 ABC affiliate stations. And it was all about comments that Kimmel made concerning the suspect in Charlie Kirk's shooting. At least that's what they say. Today, both Trump and Carr floated the possibility of further action against TV stations and shows. Now, Democratic leadership is calling on Carr to resign, but it sounds like Carr has Trump's full support. My colleague Liz Koretz has all the details.
Tonight, protests outside Disney headquarters as fallout grows from the company's abrupt decision to indefinitely pull Jimmy Kimmel's late night show off the air. Condemnation swift from Democrats in Washington to Hollywood heavyweights.
You can't go around firing somebody because you're fearful or trying to suck up to an authoritarian criminal administration in the Oval Office. That's just not how this works.
But President Trump and many of his supporters praising the decision by ABC and its parent company, Disney.
Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
The president later suggesting broadcast licenses could be taken away by the FCC. This all began Monday after Kimmel said this during his opening monologue.
The MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
After criticism from conservatives, Brendan Carr, the chairman of the FCC, threatened action against the network.
Disney needs to see some change here.
Hours later, Nexstar, which owns more than 200 local TV stations nationwide and is currently seeking FCC approval for a merger, announced it would stop airing Kimmel on all of its ABC affiliates. Soon after, ABC said it was suspending the show. Now, Sinclair, another major television group, saying they won't air Kimmel's show again unless he offers a direct apology to Kirk's family and donates to Turning Point USA.
The issue that arose here where lots and lots of people were upset was not a joke. It was not, making fun or pillaring me or the administration or the president. It was appearing to directly mislead the American public about a significant fact.
But Anna Gomez, the lone Democrat on the FCC panel, says the government is suppressing free speech.
This administration has weaponized the licensing power of the FCC in order to pressure broadcasters. They want only to have coverage in the way that they want to have it. And this is a clear violation of the First Amendment.
The move by ABC comes 2 months after CBS announced it's canceling The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, another Trump critic, and amid multiple lawsuits President Trump has filed against news organizations. In a statement, former President Obama slamming the White House, writing, after years of complaining about cancel culture, the current administration has taken it to a new and dangerous level by routinely threatening regulatory action against media companies unless they muzzle or fire reporters and commentators it doesn't like.
Our thanks to Liz Koretz for that report. With that, let's bring in our leadoff panel. Jake LaHood is here. He's the senior writer for Wired, and he's covering the Trump White House. Daniela Diaz, a congressional reporter for Notice, and Sam Stein, managing editor for The Bulwark and MSNBC political contributor, as well as former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, who spent 25 years as a federal prosecutor. Something must be going on, y'all, because we got a strong leadoff panel tonight. Jake, I'm going to start with you because today Brendan Carr said that, and this is a quote, "We are not done yet." Is it fair to say that this Kimmel situation is not the end, but it just might actually be the beginning?
Yeah, one of my sources, who's been a Trump advisor and was friends with Kirk, told me over the phone last week that this was going to be, quote, a wake-up call, the likes of which the American people have never seen. And I didn't foresee them getting a target quite as big as Jimmy Kimmel this early. But this is really becoming something that Trump and his advisors are going to use to plug and chug and justify a crackdown on about as many fronts as they want and they can at this point. So I don't think it's going to stop here. I think that if you're in TV news, or just a more expensive TV product overall, there is more to be lost, especially with the national networks. But also, don't sleep on these carriers here with Sinclair and Nexstar. And Simone, I'm not sure if you remember from your days working with TV news reporters what they call Nexstar in the biz, but it's Death Star for a reason.
Well, look, Sam, I think it's important to note here that what we're talking about is systemic, because Trump and Brendan Carr, they are talking about licenses here. They're alluding to what the FCC can do within their purview, one could argue. And you don't have to take my word for it. Like, this is what the president had to say today about taking away the licenses of networks that criticize him.
They give me only bad publicity or press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away. It would be up to Brendan Carr. I think Brendan Carr is outstanding. He's a patriot. He loves our country, and he's a tough guy. So we'll have to see.
Sam, the president says what he thinks should happen. He then follows up with he thinks the current FCC chair is amazing, underscoring that he is supporting what he how he has been running the FCC. What are you hearing tonight in Washington?
Well, there's this kind of weird dichotomy breaking out here where half of the president's defenders say, you know, this had nothing to do with Brendan Carr, it had nothing to do with the president. This was a business decision by Nexstar and by Disney, who decided on their own that Jimmy Kimmel's monologue was so tasteless that they had to take him off the air. And then on the other hand, you have Donald Trump just basically saying, you know what? I'm going to rip away their licenses if I don't like their content. I will use the instruments of the state to go after people who I think are making unfair, unflattering, and maybe untrue commentary about us. And so those two things can't coexist. Obviously, what happened yesterday with Kimmel was that Brendan Carr was very clear in his instructions to Nexstar and others that this was not acceptable to the White House, that they should take action. He was explicit. They could do it the easy way or the hard way. And then within hours, they did it. And I have to imagine that they have future targets in sight. In fact, we know they do, because today Brendan Carr was on another program saying, you know what, The View, we might go after them. And Donald Trump, in his own post, said, you know what, Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, we may go after them. They have picked their targets. They have debuted their plan and their playbook, and we should not be surprised if they keep doing it.
Well, right now, Democrats, they are trying to zero in on Brendan Carr because obviously he's the person of note in this conversation. We had Congressman Ro Khanna on the weeknight earlier, and we asked him about what specific questions he has for Carr, as Carr is now going to, at some point in time, come before the Oversight Committee. Take a listen.
Well, I want to know what he specifically threatened Nexstar with. What Nexstar, of course, wants a merger from him, and his threats to take down Jimmy Kimmel is partly what made ABC take Jimmy Kimmel off, and all of that needs to come through in the documentation. But to Simone's point, there's something more fundamental. We're not just dealing with Donald Trump, right? We're dealing with thousands of functionaries who are carrying out Trump's orders. And this is why it matters for us to take back Congress.
Daniela, what is the strategy here? What's your reporting telling you?
Simone, we've seen the House Oversight Committee, specifically Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, already take a stance on this in the last 24 hours. Robert Garcia, the top Democrat, has said that he's talking to Chairman James Comer about possibly bringing Brendan Carr in to talk to him. Now, you spoke to Ro Khanna. He actually tried to force a subpoena in a hearing today on Brendan Carr and calling him to talk to the House Oversight Committee, and that failed on party line. Look, this is clearly becoming a very partisan issue, but I do want to note, Simone, that there are some Republicans waving red flags without saying names about this incident involving Brendan Carr and Jimmy Kimmel. Look, we saw Brett Guthrie at an event today. He's the House Energy and Commerce Committee chairman, say, you know, there needs to be a little bit more oversight. They need to be careful and more conscious, careful about government influence. You know, we saw Senator Jerry Moran saying he was a little concerned about what this meant. It's very interesting to see, without them saying directly anything about Brendan Carr, that this movement from the FCC to for Jimmy Kimmel could be concerning for Republicans. But of course, this is a very political issue, and they're concerned about saying anything that could ruffle feathers with the Trump administration.
You know, Joyce, one of the questions I had was about the legal side of all of this. And there was a Politico op-ed that argued that if Kimmel sued the Trump administration over this, Supreme Court precedent would be on his side. But what are your thoughts here? Because is it the Trump administration that he could sue, or is it Disney? Like, what is going on?
Well, it's an utterly fascinating situation because it sits right at the intersection of the politics and the law. That's maybe not the place that you want to be as someone who's bringing a lawsuit, because it subjects you to a lot of troublesome sort of behavior in the course of the lawsuit when you have an administration that's willing to politicize the process, as this one has proven to be. But on the legal side of the equation, Kimmel would have a strong argument. You know, when the shoe was on the other foot, so to speak, and when Republicans were complaining about Democrats' supposed weaponization of the FCC, which I think it's important to say was an entirely different situation involving trying to prevent the spread of disinformation on social media platforms. But that being said, conservatives are very worried about what this could look like if this same sort of action is deployed against them. If Kimmel were to bring a case, if it were to make it all the way up to the Supreme Court, that would, of course, be years away. This could set new principles for when the government can and can't intervene in broadcast licenses, in what can be said online, and what role the government can play in threatening networks and threatening individuals over their First Amendment protected speech.